This is Education 701, Foundations in Leadership, Social Justice Leadership, Part 2. The power of white privilege and power. It is very important for leaders to continually question and then replace uncritical and common perceptions about power. Generating alternative perspectives for previously taken for granted ideas, logic, and beliefs is important at getting at white privilege. Recognize and acknowledge the impact of dominant cultural values. Leaders have questions to ask. 1. Do I have the most accurate and complete information available? How will I know? 2. How should I weigh information, evidence, ideas objectively and based on my own principles and values, but not blinded by my positionality? 3. Have I been open to alternative perspectives and have I heard from all voices? And 4. Has there been an opportunity to challenge, question, or refute information, decision-making standards, and decision alternatives? Critical reflection is the first and never-ending strategy for effective leaders. An emphasis on questioning past practices in relation to power dynamics or modifying decisions that have had negative consequences for marginalized groups. Leaders externalize and investigate the power relationships that exist in their organizations, while they critically reflect on power, privilege, and inequities. Great leaders start by looking inwards at themselves, their own leadership practices, their own decisions, and the actions they have taken. Leaders recognize that they are privileged actors, typically benefiting from middle and upper middle class status, and they also have a degree of control in the organization in which they lead. And they must recognize that it can be an effective lever to be used to help historically marginalized students in their system. And finally, leaders must be reflective of their values, attitudes, the conventional wisdom, and importantly, their preferences. Leaders must be willing to examine and critique their own views with as much scrutiny as they give the examination of others with divergent views. Leaders must demonstrate an attitude of openness, model sharing, and that self-scrutiny. Leaders must move beyond protecting their own perceptions to an accurate description of reality that comes from multiple points of view. In critical reflection, leaders create a rational discourse that helps create a culture of critical group discernment. And this describes the process in which groups engage in critical reflection together in order to gain clarity and understanding of particular issues at hand, but also as an organizational culture and a skill set that fosters a culture of group dialogue. Some traps to avoid. Avoid an organizational culture where people of color only contribute in ways that white people are comfortable with. Avoid only relying on, quote, objective, end quote, reports and case studies while dismissing data from the personal experiences of staff. When horrific instances of racial injustice occur, acknowledge and find space for the emotions they will trigger in your team. Discussions about racism must be encouraged and cannot be thought of as divisive or unproductive. Here are some strategies for creating racial equity in schools. How do I respond now to situations related to racism right now in my classroom or school? Well, first, take a breath. Pause. Ground yourself. Reflect. Affirm the child. So important to affirm the humanity of each child. Each child must be seen, must be known, must be heard. Inquire. Ask questions. Get more information. Engage in active listening. Continue the conversation. And while doing so, bring your own racial identity into the conversation. Intervene. There will be times in which you'll have to intervene immediately in order to prevent harm coming to a child in your school or classroom. Apply a racial equity lens where you uncover structures, policies, practices, and behaviors. And finally, follow up. Go back and look again. Have things changed or have they not? Some long-term strategies would include educating yourself about race and racism, creating dialogue in your organization about race and the impact of systemic racism, analyzing school structures through a racial equity lens. Much can be discovered about the systemic racism that exists in our organizations through this analysis. And finally, build alliances. Look for allies. They are there. Well, here are some things to do as a leader in attempting to bring about racial equity in your organization. 1. Focus on transforming your organization to fit all people, as opposed to attempting to change some people to fit your organization. Prioritize humanity. Make it possible for people to work there with the dignity of having their histories acknowledged and their life experiences valued. Understand how power works and use it for change. Look for and then see the norms, values, and practices in your organization that advantage white people and their ways of working to the exclusion and oppression of others. Commit time and resources to staff members' individual learning, understand history, interrogate personal biases, build empathy and respect for others, and importantly, get comfortable with vulnerability. Great leaders would ask these questions. What informal and formal power do I hold to shift the culture of this organization? How should I wield this power to change damaging norms and power dynamics within our organization? How have notions of, quote, professionalism and quote, appropriateness, end quote, been wielded by white people to avoid or stifle challenging perspectives or conversations? And finally, embrace conflict as part of the process of continuous improvement. Do not leave unchallenged in the moment the silence when someone uses words like racism, white people, whiteness, privilege. That silence maintains the status quo. Let's talk about it. And last, do not let the process of building a new organizational culture come at a cost to people of color by perpetuating inhumanity in your organization when you explicitly or implicitly rely on people of color, especially black people, to carry the burdens of educating others or fighting racism. This is everyone's work. It is everyone's job. It is everyone's calling. We all must do this work in order to make the world a better place for the children in our classrooms today.